What's going on, guys? They're starting to trickle in here. Welcome. We're going to just wait a few more minutes. Looks like we're pushing 100 folks in here already, so we're just going to give it another couple minutes before we jump in with Aaron and Brad. So appreciate you guys coming out on this Thursday night, and hopefully these boys can deliver you some info to chase more big bucks on your property. As you can tell, Aaron and Brad aren't short on them behind him here.
More here. It's not.
Brad is short. Nobody's ever called him anything different. Look at this.
Right. So Aaron, Brad, what have you guys been doing here these last couple weeks on your properties to just get ready for upcoming seasons and what have you?
Yeah. So I mean, here in Iowa, it's been really wet, like it has across the Midwest. But we're just kind of trying to get everything ready for when Mother Nature says go. So just telling these guys, it's been a little bit frustrating. A little bit of high anxiety just knowing that we have so much to do, but the weather's kind of keeping us out of the field. So
looks like next week
gonna break.
Yeah. Next week we should be getting into work.
Yep. So again, Mother Nature's kind of kicked in and told us stay out for now, and a lot of the time you're doing more damage than good. But we're looking forward to getting in there and starting to get some projects done.
All right, Aaron, it's 6:02 here. We're going to give folks till about 6:04, 6:05 to hop in here before we dive in. So pick a deer behind you and give a 2-minute story on how it all came to fruition.
I didn't shoot them all, unfortunately, but I was pretty much there for all of them. One that kind of sticks in my memory, I think we have enough camera room here.
Yeah,
is Bubbles, deer we call Bubbles, and we called him Bubbles because he had a lot of tines, but they were all kind of bubbly, kind of almost stunted. And my brother Skippy ended up closing the deal on that deer. We bought this farm right here. It was one of the first sheds we ever found, and passed him that year as a good deer, what we thought was an old deer. And like I say with a lot of deer, when you put low pressure in and put the work in early on, to kind of set the stage and the architecture around the deer, you can make it happen early. And that's definitely the case with this deer called Bubbles. My brother shot him like 4 or 5 years ago on opening day. And I remember it was good because I had a good hunt that night. And then he always plays dumb, like, yeah, I seen a few and whatnot. And then everybody's like hanging out in the house pretty darn early. And I'm like, something's up. So that was a cool deer, obviously a mega jumbo over that 200 range, and it's just cool to get one done that early. And he actually called that in October 1st, which is pretty rare to kill a deer in
Walk
October.
back and point to the deer that you're talking about.
Bubbles right over here.
Yeah, so you guys can't quite tell how impressive that deer is from the camera, but he's all of 200. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Cool to get it done early on, makes you, gets you excited for the rest of the season and kind of puts you at ease a little bit. So, yeah, that was a cool one.
Well, sweet. We got a bunch of folks in here, so I appreciate all you guys coming out. We're going to kick this off with Aaron and Brad, hopefully deliver you guys a bunch of useful info to improve your properties here over the next few months before September, October roll in. So a couple just administrative things. Everyone's camera and mic are turned off. If you use the bar at the bottom, there is a chat function and a Q&A function. If you have questions that you want Aaron or Brad to touch on during this webinar, drop them in the Q&A. If you have just general comments, general questions, drop them in the chat. We are going to be monitoring both of those. If you have onX questions, please put those in the chat, and we will handle those as they come up. And then again, please keep it respectful. There's a bunch of people in this webinar, so keep it cordial. We'll appreciate that. We'll also be doing some giveaways, so we'll drop a link in the chat here a couple times throughout the webinar. We're going to be giving away some onX swag, but then way more importantly, we're giving away 5 one-on-one consultations with Aaron. So those are going to be essentially like half-hour Zoom consultations where you're going to get a one-on-one walkthrough with Aaron to help you improve your property using his expertise. So with that, kind of the main topics that we want to cover in this webinar are utilizing state and federal fundings to improve your native habitat. Aaron has a wealth of knowledge there, so we're going to dive into that. Strategically planting native grasses, forbs, shrubs, trees, things of that nature. So we're going to dive into that. And then the last major topic is going to be food plot design and execution. And then, of course, as I said, if you guys throw questions in the Q&A, we're going to be answering those as we can live. And then towards the end of the webinar, I'm going to ask you guys if you want Aaron to give a 5-minute breakdown of your property, the last 10 minutes or so of the webinar. We're going to have you guys drop coordinates of your farm, and we're going to pick a couple of those coordinates, and Aaron's just going to give a quick breakdown here at the end of the webinar. But I'll ask you guys to start dropping coordinates around 6:30 or something like that, and we'll choose a few of those. So without further ado, Aaron and Brad, if you guys want to just give a quick intro, and we'll dive right in.
Yeah, I'm Aaron. Obviously, some of you guys on onX might know me from killing the deer angry this year, and more than I like deer hunting is land management, habitat improvement, and just working on my property. So I'd like to go over a lot of that here today.
I'm Brad Bever. I'm a content creating outdoor space, but mainly just follow this guy around the camera. Obviously, you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and 9010 Project. We have a lot of great content on everything we're going to be talking about tonight. So,
heck yeah. Well, sweet. So this is obviously, you know, kind of a Midwest-based webinar for growing and harboring mature bucks. So, you know, with that in mind, Aaron, utilizing state and federal funding, you know, to improve your grounds, you know, with subsidized money from the government. Can you kind of talk about that and some of the things that you have done on your farms and how those could be applicable to folks across the Midwest, whether they're in Wisconsin, in Iowa, you know, in Michigan, and how folks can really utilize those programs to their fullest extent?
Yeah. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, how this could be broad outside of just Iowa. And the biggest focal point is, you know, there's different programs, equip, WHIP. There's a lot of different programs that aren't just state, right? They're federal. And when you're talking federal, your federal funding is actually a lot of the times going to be a better route to go. There's going to be more avenues and better funding. So to make it a little bit more relatable, like right now, I'm currently doing some windbreaks on a new piece of property. And those windbreaks are going to not only, of course, act as a windbreak, but they're going to give me a buffer between a road that I have that makes my farm very much wide open. So what happened in my case is the forester wrote a plan for me on an area of my property that's currently doing nothing, right? And they're saying, Aaron, you got to abide by these rules, plant them on these dates, and then here's the species of trees that we want you to put in there. That's going to help with that windbreak, the thermal cover, and then different, you know, trees that are going to offer something to wildlife, not just because you say, I really love birch trees. I've always wanted to put birch trees in a row right here along the road. So you do got to follow the guidelines of what the government tells you. Of course, when there's government involved, there's always going to be strings attached, right? But for somebody that is looking to utilize their property, make it better, and then also not empty their wallets doing it, it's a great program to look into. Here in Iowa, we work with NRCS office to do that. There's different agencies outside of NRCS office, but those are held in multiple different states, right? Those aren't just an Iowa-based organization. So again, meeting with the local forester, and we've talked about this a little bit on our 9010 on Instagram and Facebook, is that you're going to utilize those government resources to help you increase the value, increase the usage, increase something that's currently doing nothing on your farm. So utilize those different government agencies to help you pay to do something you already want to do. But again, there are a little bit of regulations that come along with that. But for me, the cost is worth the reward. So currently we're doing that this following week. The weather's been really crummy, but we have a resource here in Iowa that you can buy a 2-foot tall tree for 80 cents. You know, I understand that you're planting it, realizing that there's a long road ahead, but when you're planting thousands of them and you know, 80% of them might survive, it's worth planting them at that 1 foot, 2 foot versus going to buy a 5-foot tree at Menards. So And then also government agencies to utilize other than just tree planting. They will help you do grass plantings, their CRP programs. So I would definitely encourage you to look into different resources within your state, and utilize whether that's a state or a federal funding program. So it's definitely helped us on our properties, and I'm going to continue in the future to utilize them, not for a financial gain, but just as a kind of a more of an ease to the wallet, just justifying putting some of these different improvements on your property.
And so with that, you mentioned the NRCS, which is the Natural Resources
Conservation Stewardship.
Okay.
Now somebody's gonna get mad and be like, no, that's not it. I'm just
So
it's pretty close.
So
yeah, it's pretty close.
So when you decided you wanted to plant this windbreak on your property, what steps did you take to talk to that forester to get this, budget approved or whatever it is you're working with these folks? Is this like an online application, or how can folks go about this and dive into some of their own research?
Yeah, so I just called the local NRCS office, and again, when you're dealing with the government, it's like pulling teeth. I mean, it's a slow process, but the juice is worth the squeeze in this scenario. So it is a little bit of a painstaking process to get it in motion, but after it's in motion, it's a very little amount of paperwork involved to get that financial assistance. And it's really, you're dealing with a professional too. So you're not just putting what you want, your opinion. They'll send a professional out that's going to write a forestry plan, that's going to write a planting plan for you. So not only using their services for a financial benefit, but their expertise, because you might just be doing this one time, but they're doing this for a living 365 days a year.
And so when you're doing that, I mean, like, do you have a yearly check-in with these folks, or what's the process, after you get it started and implemented? How involved are these entities with what you're doing on your property?
Very little. So that's the beauty of it, right? So once you get the paperwork on the front end, you get it pushed through, and you basically check all the boxes, which what the government does. As long as you check the boxes, they leave you alone. So after that, I mean, it's kind of, you're just there to hopefully maintain, and enjoy the benefits of what they help pay for and plan.
Heck yeah. And I assume you've utilized some of these state and federal fundings, for years. What would be, if somebody was just getting started into it, what would be your recommendation as far as like start with native grasses and CRP, or, start with tree plantings, or is it based upon, maybe acreage size that you have to work with?
Sure.
Dial in some of that for these folks.
So don't, I know this is cliche, but don't bite off more than you can chew. Right now I got excited, like everybody does, like per se during COVID, and you get home and you start Amazon shopping. You're like, oh man, I'm going to get this and this and this and this. And then it shows up and you're like, did I need all of this? Did I really buy this? So do it in stages. You don't got to do it all at once. I have 4,200 trees sitting in my garage for the past 2 weeks waiting for this weather to break. So not everybody's going to have those tools to cut in behind their tractor 4,500 trees. So start small, get a forestry plan and say, hey, Mr. Forester, this is what I want to see out of my farm. Can you help design the architecture on a 5-year program? This is what I want to do year 1. This is what I want to do year 2, 3, 4, and so on. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Sometimes it becomes a full-time job, and it can take the fun out of it.
One thing I've noticed too is like just following you around on farms.
Yeah.
There's more programs out there than you think. So like it seems like everything we do, there's some sort of program that you can be enrolled in. So definitely like look at and research the programs that are available, because there could be something that you don't even know about.
100%.
Like, it seems like a lot of the farms we go to, you're like, yeah, this is federal, and I'm like, I didn't even know this existed. So
yeah.
If me, kind of an outsider, like there's so many programs that you don't know about. So if you research those and find them, you might be surprised at like what you could get for your property.
And they can help with things that are currently a problem, not just an enhancement purpose. So like Brad said, when I was going through with the forester, 2-3 weeks ago, he said, Aaron, when I was gonna, going through college to do this job, I would plant, cedars for the company or the state program that I got all these saplings from. He said, I've learned to hate cedars. I love them as a deer hunter. But he pointed out, see how thick some of your cedars are on this farm? I'm like, yeah, I've noticed that. That's a good thing. He's like, well, it can actually choke out some of your other trees and a lot of the forest floor. And we actually have a program, to Brad's point, we actually have a program where we'll pay you to go in and thin those cedars out. I'm like, hold on. So you guys are going to pay me to go get rid of these cedars to make it more inhabitable for deer to move through? He's like, yeah, this is a different program we have. So again, I'm always learning that too. So setting up a plan with the forester is definitely the way to go.
So a question came in here, outside of USDA or the NRCS, do you know of any other available programs? Or are those kind of like your two major ones?
So I do know of other ones, but again, there's too many hoops to jump through to make it worthwhile. So I'd like to stick to those two different departments, because not only will they aid in that funding, but they'll help the architecture and sending out a professional. So there's certainly other avenues. Those are just the ones that have worked for me.
Right on. Well, sweet. And that segues into, strategically planting native grasses, forbs, shrubs, trees.
Yeah.
So you said you were currently designing a windbreak, and I'm sure you're doing a bunch of other things on a number of your properties. But starting with like native grasses, how are you utilizing those on some of your properties, be it through government programs, be it not through government programs, but what are you looking to build with native grasses?
So, Brad and I had a video. What did you label the video at 9010?
The
grass.
Something about grass. Burning, I think it's just reestablishing native grasses, basically.
Yeah. So basically I had the forester write out a plan on areas that were very conducive to growing trees and different species of trees. Not only our windbreak, but just areas where I'm like, you know what, that spot's doing nothing. It's relatively flat. It might only be a half acre here, quarter acre here, 4 acres there. But you'll notice with some of these farms, depending on where you're at, that you're driving through areas that have just been just like your living room, right? You're just used to what it's looking like. And you want to mix it up. You want to turn some of these areas, your native grasses are a great tool to make something out of nothing. And that's what we talked about in our last video, is again, making something out of nothing. So don't bite off more you can chew, but you can utilize a lot of these areas that, they're areas that you're getting to and from your stands, to and from your food plots, or your enjoyment purposes during the summer, riding quads, whatever, to create a barrier between you and the inhabitants that are using your farm. So utilizing native warm season grasses is one of my favorite things. It's cheap, it's easy, anybody can do it. And you're taking pockets of your farm that are currently doing nothing and turning it into something. And when I say it's cheap, it's easy and fun, you don't have to have a drill. I currently have a drill. I got one 2 years ago, and it sure makes it easy. But use Mother Nature to utilize getting some of these warm season native grasses into the soil. So when you talk about frost seeding with food plots, a lot of people talk about overseeding or frost seeding clover. You can do the same thing with native warm season grasses. So you go through in the fall and you kill off all that vegetation. And if you don't, that's fine. You can do it in the spring if you're like, Aaron, I don't want to sit in my tree stand and look at this nasty, brown, ugly area that you said to kill off. You can certainly wait to do it in the spring. So you frost seed your seed in. You wait for your cool season grasses, which is like your lawn right outside. You wait for that to pop up. You kill it all off with like a glyphosate Roundup. And then your soil temperatures have to reach 60, 70 degrees. Don't quote me on that. For your natives to pop up. So you're going to say, well, I just frost seeded all that this spring, our native warm season grasses. Now I'm going to go through, I'm going to kill it off because it's all growing. It's not, it's laying dormant. It's got sucked into your soil. It's sitting there ready to pop. You just got to kill off that competition. So again, going back to your point and to answer your question long-winded, is turn some of these areas that are doing nothing into something by grass. I mean, grass is very vibrant. It can grow almost anywhere with very little work.
Explain what you mean by doing nothing, because like we say that a lot, especially on 910. Like you're always saying, we need to turn something that's doing nothing into something.
Yeah.
Explain what you mean by like doing nothing.
So again, coming from Michigan, we didn't have, areas like we do in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, areas that we call brome grass. It's just grass that's this tall. You might have a couple trees growing through it here and there. And it's like, I could do something with that. And when you say doing something with nothing, it's just a half acre next to your driveway going into your property. It's a quarter acre area next to your food plot that's just grass this tall. It's like, you can do something with that. Go burn it down, light it on fire. Like I said, when that green pops through, go ahead and kill it off, and you can drill it in. You can hand broadcast it. You can put it on a cone spreader. So, it's relatively little effort, big reward.
So with that, in the registration email, we asked a question just on general sentiment of what folks really wanted to dive into.
Yeah.
I know on some properties I hunt, folks have established a lot of native pollinator blends and things of that nature that deer really seem to bed in. And so a common question was, how can I create more bedding? Do you use some of these native grasses, shrubs, forbs to strategically try to create bedding areas at all, or is that out of the realm?
No, 100%. And Brad, remember we were doing the video last couple weeks ago, and I said, you see how much sunlight's getting into these native grasses on that south hillside. So deer like security, right? So you got a farm and it has a draw going through it. They might not bed in that draw because there's not that security. Coyote, human, predator comes into that area, and they're just caught with their pants down. They're just like, where do I go from here? So we're going to use that mixture of seeds, like you said, that planting, that native orange season planting, along with your forbs and along with your, I toss flowers and stuff in there because creates bedding, creates food, and not only just for deer, right? You're going to get different birds going in there. And that's why a lot of these CRP blends aren't mixed just for the deer hunter. They're mixed for all the habitat to use. And, but as far as creating a bedding, if you're like, hey, I want to put in warm native season grasses just for bedding, you can adjust your seed blend to make it just for bedding if you want to be just for bedding. So I think creating that security cover in those areas that currently don't have it are a huge benefit to maximize your holding capacity.
So a couple things there. Sorry to cut you off, Brad.
You're good.
When you say strategically plant grasses for bedding, are there some species that come to mind for you that you're strategically planting to create that security cover?
Yeah.
And then that leads right into, what in your mind defines security cover with grasses? Do they need it to be 3 feet high? Do they need a mix of shrubs in there? Explain kind of the types of grasses that you're looking to plant for bedding, and what a good benchmark is to say, all right, deer are going to bed in this, but they won't bed in that, if you will.
Yeah. So Brad and I did a video again, I keep alluding to it, a couple weeks ago, where there was the right grass, but it had too much brome and too much cool seasons choking it out. So what we did is we went in and we burned it, and then we interseeded it, and we just released what was already there in the soil. And with that said, yeah, there's 100%, blends that come to mind. The taller, the thicker, the more abundant, obviously, the better. When you walk through it and you're having a hard time getting through it, that's going to be better for the deer, making a mess, right? Those seeds that come to mind are Cave and Rock, Indian, Switch, one of those was Big Blue, Little Blue. So there's definitely blends, and do your research. Go online, do your research. Go to 9010 and we'll tell you more about those seeds that are specifically for deer. Now, when you talk about these areas that are doing nothing, you want to turn into something, you can certainly use any seed you want. When you're doing CRP and government programs, they're definitely gonna, they're gonna prescribe a blend that you got to put in there, and that's the ones that's more conducive to all sorts of wildlife. But if you're just looking for security cover, thickness, height, something that's going to grow on a freaking rock, a desert in Arizona, good soil, bad soil, sandy soil, cave and rock, big blue, little blue. Those are all going to grow really, really well, no matter where you're at.
What I was going to say is that it seems like me just kind of following you around, like you love to use native grass. It's like, how much do you think, like if you have a property, clean slate,
Yeah.
If you have that, you know, something doing nothing, how much of your property usually is native grass? I feel like it's a lot.
Of the areas that are doing nothing?
Yeah, like if
Or
you're someone's doing
what
nothing,
I'm
like,
getting paid for CRP.
Either way, like I feel like we're always putting
Yeah.
in grass. I feel like we're always
Yeah, it's
around grass or putting in grass.
so it's like with CRP in the state of Iowa, they'll designate your fields, right? So they're gonna say, hey, you got 100 acres we're taking out a row crop. We're gonna put that into CRP program. Out of that 100 acres, they could section off that 100 acres into 4 fields. Now, with that said, I love having more cover. It doesn't seem like we have a lack of food. So Jared, who's talking over here, was commenting earlier on, you know, where we are at in Iowa. Everybody comes here and they're like, where's all the timber? Like, where's the woods? Where's the forest? We have no lack of food in open areas. So what I try to do, and this is just me, I try to turn more of our crop fields into CRP fields, into grass plantings. Government's going to pay you for it, equal or more than what you're currently maybe hassling with a farmer for. And then when I was talking about sectioning off those fields, so you got 100 acres, they could say, we're going to put these in 4 fields, Aaron. They're going to pay you, right? They're going to still pay you to put or keep or whatever you want. 10% of that area, you can put food plots in. So, you know, we notice in the spring that sometimes we have leftover food. You could still run a combine through some of our bean fields, our corn fields. So utilize those government programs to not only pay you for it, but then you're also getting 10% of that to put back into food plots. That's a win-win. So we do a lot. Brad notices that I love doing it because it's super easy to do.
I was amazed when you told me that the CRP programs, a lot of them equate for a certain amount of food plots.
Yeah.
It's almost like, why wouldn't you do that?
I don't know.
Because if they're gonna allow you to also put in food specifically for deer in a food plot form, like,
and get paid for it?
and get paid for it, it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
For a deer hunter, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Win-win. And I know, like, I have a personal, you know, family Iowa farm here, and we do some of those pollinator blends and stuff in some of our doing nothing areas as of about 3 years ago, and we've noticed massive increases in turkey populations. We are seeing bobwhite quails, you know, for the first time in a couple decades.
Yeah.
You know, it benefits all wildlife, you know, beyond just deer, especially when you're putting those native plants in. You know, it really strikes a chord with the native critters.
Yeah, you're right. We've noticed an uptick of bobwhite quail, pheasants. You know, it creates a plethora of different areas for different creatures that are on your property. So
Big turkey guys.
yeah, well, it's great for nesting for turkeys. I mean, gosh, I've been burning in the spring. I'm like, oh my gosh, this turkey will not leave this nest. So yeah, you're right. Everything's going to use it.
Well, sweet. And so kind of at the tail end of grasses, forbs, shrubs, trees, there's a couple questions that came in on trees. What are your favorite tree species to plant, both from a windbreak or cover standpoint? Well, I guess I'll summarize it as non-food trees and food trees. Speak to those two things a little bit and the species that you're focusing on, how you're strategically planting them, and dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so again, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm an expert with trees. I got a brother Skip that's just he's a nut job. I mean, he's got trees in his backyard in a subdivision where it's just hillbilly stuff. So again, I just go back to the basics, right? So eastern red cedars, they're gonna grow anywhere. They'll grow on a rock, they'll grow in sand soil, they'll grow in junk. So there's a lot of people that don't like cedars because they can get a little invasive and out of control, right? I mean, you've seen what cedar thickets can turn into. But I really like them if you're going to plant them on a windbreak. So that's going to be my ultimate windbreak thermal cover tree. And because it's just no maintenance, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen pine trees like rub posts here, right?
Yeah.
So somebody will bring them from Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Like, why do you want pine trees? Like, they just rub the crap out of them. I don't know what it is. So I don't seem to have luck with pines, you know, whether that be white or red pines, because they just get attacked. Like, it's like planting a thorn tree when you plant a cedar. Like, there's nothing that's going to mess with it. It just grows and grows. It's a slow growing tree. But I really like the cedar tree. As far as, you know, tree that's more utilized by Mother Nature for food and stuff, we use a variety. We use chestnut, walnut, chickaping oaks, bur oaks. You know, obviously the variety oaks are always going to come to mind. So, but we're weirdos into fruit tree plantings. Like, fruit tree plantings are the most rewarding and frustrating tree that you can plant. I've planted acres and acres and acres and acres of fruit trees over the past 10, 15 years, and I have yet to set up a tree stand anywhere near it. It's just Mother Nature has a way of taking them out or not producing, or they're just slow grow. So hopefully my grandkids will be able to hunt over a fruit tree I plant someday.
Classic. Yeah, trees are definitely a long-term game for the most part, but you know.
Did you ever hunt apple orchards?
I have never hunted an apple orchard.
So again, up in like some of the areas, more agricultural fruit areas up in Michigan, I mean, that's all people hunt, right? It's, hey, I hunt a blueberry field. I hunt an old apple orchard. So for me, it's getting a variety of what's not currently here, right? So if you're hunting apple orchards, they're probably not going to just go gangbusters over apple orchards. Well, here in southern Iowa, there isn't apple orchards. I mean, there's no such thing. So plant something on your farm that's not currently there. Do a persimmon tree. Do something that's not really necessarily native. But what I will tell you is when it comes to planting some of these fruit trees, some of these nut trees, go online and look to see what zone you are in. I've made that mistake before where I'm like, oh my gosh, fastgrowingtrees.com. I didn't realize I could grow lime trees here. Like, I drink Corona already. I need limes. Let's get them shipped. Like, what do you mean? They're not going to grow here. So look out what zone that you guys are in before you pick out what trees you're going to plant.
Can you explain that a little bit, just as far as what zone you're in?
The limes and Coronas?
Just as far as...
So currently we're in zone 5. So you look up and you're going to see a big map of the U.S. and it's going to have different colors on it. It's going to say, you know, you're going to zoom in and this is where I'm located. And these are the trees that are conducive to those zones. And a lot of the times when you order those trees, they're going to say, this tree is good for zone 1 to 5, 4 to 6, 3 to 7, and so on. So definitely do your research before you put in all that work into planting the tree and you realize you have a tree that's not going to grow in your area.
And we're planting trees next week, so look for a tree video.
Yep.
Week.
Yep. They're currently in my garage.
Yeah, we're going to be digging deep into this subject. We should have a video up soon. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. So with that, we're going to kind of move into food plots and food plot execution. But want to remind you guys, we're going to throw a link in the chat right now for the giveaways. So look at that link. Go click on that. That link is going to expire at midnight tonight. So if you want a chance at a one-on-one consultation with Aaron for your property, or you want some free onX swag, make sure you follow that link in the chat and quick fill out that form to get yourself entered. And then also, if you want to be one of the 2 properties that Aaron takes a quick 5-minute look at here in about 25 minutes, drop the coordinates of your property in the Q&A. We're gathering those. And again, we're going to break down 2 of them for about 5 minutes. So 2 of you guys are going to get a little mini consultation here. So moving on to food plot design and execution. So there's a lot that goes into food plots. Obviously, people are spending a lot of money and a lot of time putting in food plots. But from your perspective, what's a strategic way to go about it? You know, so often you have folks that just put in, you know, corn or beans in the spring and just let it roll, or, you know, they maybe just plant a clover plot because it's easy and it's what they know. But I mean, as far as strategically planting a food plot to hunt at a specific time period or so on and so forth, can you explain kind of your strategy on food plots and your thoughts and takeaways just from the years of experimenting that you've had?
Yeah. I mean, Brad, you got a lot of experience with this too, with just picking up a new farm that you've been leasing the past couple years, and you really, not to give you guys a free plug here, a cheesy plug, but use onX, guys. Go on your onX and get on that topo view map. You don't have to do Google Maps no more. You don't have to go print stuff and mark it up with a marker. Like, utilize your onX maps to use that. It's a huge tool for me. And I've done it in the past where I haven't pulled up that onX map, haven't looked out in an aerial, and I just went in based on what I thought looked cool, and then I pull it up and I'm like, oh man, I'm doing it all wrong. So, and when it comes to establishing new food plots, and to Jared's point, when you're gonna hunt it, right? So you talk about something like beans for a food plot rather than a farmer. Hey guys, Farmer Joe, I know you're renting 100 acres of farm ground from me. I want to leave 2 acres standing. That's great. That's great if you want to hunt late season. But for me, as a bow hunter wanting to get after them early, like Skippy did Bubbles here, I want to make sure that those beans are green when I'm hunting them, right? When I'm bow hunting in October. So we plant our food plots later. Our bean plots. So you always want to have something, kind of like your flower bed at home. You want something blooming at all times of the year, right? So with food too, you want to have something that is palatable, that's attractive, that's maybe not everywhere else during all parts of the season when you're going to be out in the woods. But as far as establishing food plots, Brad, you kind of had an experiment over the past couple of years on your farm. So how did you establish, and why did you pick out where to put where you put what?
Yeah.
What to put where you put
To me,
what?
food plots are it's kind of broad because like you can put food plots anywhere. Like if you're hunting a specific deer, maybe you need a food plot here because he's going to be here, or like there's no general rule to put a food plot here and it'll work. Like it depends on the land. It depends on everything. But to your point, we just put in 2 new plots on my lease. So maybe you're leasing ground, but they're just small little kill plots. And
I love those.
How small are you talking when you talk about a kill plot?
Less than an acre. Less than an acre.
So something that you could theoretically do with a push-on lawnmower.
Yeah, the one we did,
backpack sprayer.
the one we did with a hand spreader. I mean, it's a lot of kill plot, poor man plot style stuff. But again, it depends on your style of hunting and like how the deer move and all this. Like on that lease, I can think of a plot specifically. It's kind of on the neighbor's fence, but it's kind of a transition area out to where they feed into the big ag.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more just a staging area to stop them before they get out to the ag for the night. So again, food plots is kind of like broad. It depends on your situation, but we plant a lot of green stuff. I know you like a lot of green stuff too.
As long as you're doing those small areas like Brad's saying, those kill plots. I mean, think about, it's not like putting in corn and beans, right? I mean, think about the tonnage you're producing in what could be the size of this living room and this kitchen. So they're just going to sit in there like a lawnmower, just picking through it. And guess what? It's just going to pop right back up. I love those little kill plots.
One thing you taught me this following year, and I've always been, obviously not as experienced. The more I work with this guy, the more I learn. But one thing you taught me last fall was how cereal grain plots work as opposed to like brassicas or your tubes. And you just made the analogy of like a lawnmower. And on the cereal grain plots, the deer will come through and eat them, but they grow right back. So it's kind of like a plot that keeps on giving because it's just like your lawn. They'll literally grow back. So what are cereal grains? Wheat, rye, oats. So like stuff like that, we plant a lot of here.
Relatively cheap. Because you said,
Very cheap.
Aaron, give me a list of stuff I'm going to use. And I said, and your first thing was, well, how much is all this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's pretty cheap. So
very, very cheap stuff that you can broadcast. Usually it grows quickly. It grows like luscious, like tonnage, like you just said.
And when you planted it, to Brad's point, remember we didn't get any rain for a long time,
like
and it still sat there. It still sat there dormant, waiting for that moisture to hit it to pop. So
and it eventually popped. But what's great about those cereal grain plots is, like you said, like it's like a lawnmower. They'll come through and nip them, and they just grows right back. Where if you're planting, a lot of guys like to plant brassicas or turnips. Once they eat those leaves, they're not coming back. Then you have to rely on the tubes, and a lot of times those tubes or turnips or roots, don't produce until late season. So you kind of have a lull of your food plot working.
Yeah.
If they come through and get those leaves first.
I've
So.
seen it where he's talking about the tubes and bulbs with turnips and radishes, that a lot of the times, especially if it's new, if you just started doing turnips and radishes and they're not used to the texture and the taste, is sometimes it takes a frost for it to break down and to get the sugars into them. So they will eat the leaves, but so to Brad's point is we came through later on his lease and put in cereal grains because maybe you were too busy to plant turnips and radishes. They always say, you know, for me, rain or shine by July 29. If you didn't get them in, if you didn't get that rain, the deer pounded them. You overseeded, you underseeded. You can go back through with cereal grains as far as a little kill plot. I love how Brad said, you know, a small kill plot, an acre or less. And you can go through and hand broadcast that. You don't got to get a drill, a tractor, you know, use the farmer stuff. You can just do it handbag spreader, just let it rip. And the seed's really cheap. The growth rate's great, and it just keeps giving.
And we also have a plot that's not, we have a couple bean plots on that lease too. But my point in saying that is they're kind of in the middle of timber. So like I said before, like food plots are kind of dependent on your area and on the deer you're hunting. A lot of our green plots are next to row crop. So if you have beans or
now, when
or
you say
corn,
row crop, is it that the farmer planted or did you plant it?
no, farmer. So like on this lease, we have huge
Yeah.
ag row crop. So I don't want to put a bean plot next to a bean field.
Yeah, right.
So that's where I'm going to put a green plot so that they have a variety, like Aaron was talking about earlier. But we also have bean plots that are kind of in the middle of timber. They're like maybe a little bit bigger than an acre, so that you can get away with beans. But another thing about bean plots and any food plot in general is you got to realize when deer are going to hit them and how long they're going to last. So like our bean plots, we had fenced off so the deer couldn't get into them until like October, because if you don't do that, you won't have beans to hunt over in November. So that's another good thing to keep in mind is like if you're going to hunt, if you know you're gonna construct this food plot in the middle of a timber, and it's going to be your best food plot, you can't plant it and then the deer come in and wipe it out before you get to hunt it. So that's something else to keep in mind. Like again, we have bean plots that if we don't have them fenced off, they'll be roasted by October, November, and then all your work's basically not there.
So let me pop into that and just like kind of a quick tip, and this is just I've learned it through the years. Is that's why I said, is the farmer planting that bean field or you? Because if it's you planting that bean field, typically you're going to get it in later, right? Like the farmers spring, they're like, dude, we need to hit the fields, right? So when Brad's going in there, Aaron's going in there, you guys, you're going to plant later. So your leaves are naturally going to stay on those beans later than your farmers are, right? So do this. Take the bag mix, like we just said. Take your cereal grains, take your, you know, even your brassicas, and just go into the farmer's field next to your food plot, and all those leaves are going to have dropped, right? That's perfect time to toss in that teeny tiny seed. He probably isn't going to care. He's not going to mind. He's going through there to just grab his beans out of there. Next thing you know, you have a field, an area that was just already dormant. The bean pods are sitting there. They're ready to be picked. They've already yellowed. Go in there, plant that grass, plant the oats, the rye, the chicory, the alfalfa. The turnips and radishes aren't going to get bulbs, but they'll still get leafy. And just intermix it in there. And again, we talked about doing something with nothing, so that'll definitely give you a little bit more tonnage.
We always talk about, like smorgasbord. Like give them everything, and then if it works, they'll have it. If it doesn't, they have a supplement for a turnip that doesn't grow or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of those green plots, if you just kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink, they'll work.
Just a buffet.
Just a buffet of stuff.
Yeah.
So a couple questions on food plots. That was super good, comprehensive coverage, guys. Yeah. First being there's a number of questions in the chat about either just poor soils that are, sandy, yellow, just poor soil. What should I plant? Yeah. And then also really wet. What should I plant if my property is really wet?
Ooh, wet. That's a tough one.
Those are the two common questions here on food plots.
I can deal with poor soil, but wet becomes a little bit more difficult, to be honest with you. I every year I learn more than I knew the year before. So currently in a wet circumstance, you're just going to have to plant later. Grass is going to grow, whether it's a food grass or we were talking about native grasses earlier. You're going to find a grass that's going to grow in anything. So if you have a wet soil, obviously grass is going to take in anything. But with your crummy soil, do soil samples. You can manipulate your soil within reason and within, monetary reason to do whatever you need it to do, as long as you have the growing season, right? So it's like I'm living in southern Michigan versus the peninsula, upper peninsula. So we're going to have a different growing window. The upper peninsula is going to have 3 good months of growing, while down south you have more. And I always said, why aren't there cornfields up here? Where's the beans? Where's the corn? It's the growing season. So we can manipulate your soils, do a soil sample. You can bring those in, you can send them in. There's areas or there's ways to search online where to mail those soil samples in if you don't have somebody local. And then, I know not everybody's going to go pick up a grain cart. You can go to Lowe's, Menards. You can get nitrogen. You can get potash. You can get these different things to manipulate your soil to grow what you need it to grow.
One thing I've learned too, I don't know if you picked up on this or if you may have even told me, but if your soil's not perfect for the food plot that you're growing, you can have a great looking food plot, but the deer are going to eat it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
The acidity and the pH isn't there. So you could have 2 food plots next to each other. One of them is perfect pH, perfect acidity. The other one's thrown off. The deer are going to eat the better pH level because it literally tastes better. So like you can have a great looking clover plot, but if it doesn't taste good to the deer, they're not going to eat it. And that's why soil samples are so important, because everything, everyone says it all the time, but your food plot starts with your soil, and it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And guys, you can do a soil sample for about $10.
Yeah, they're super easy.
Yeah. So to go back, I regret saying what I said about the wet soil. A lot of the times with a clover blend too, you're going to do really well with wet soil. And, everybody says to me, like, what kind of clover should I plant? I'm like, don't plant one variety, because one might like wet area, one might like a little dry, one might like a little acidic. So do some research and get 4 different blends to put in there, and you still spread it in that same area. But that blend that likes that certain area is going to thrive in areas that it might not have thrived. So you're going to reduce those bare spots.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, last thing on food plots, and I know that this is really too specific to answer, but everybody in this webinar is in the Midwest, so generalize for me. Let's say you wanted a food plot optimized for September, October, November, December. What are you planting for September? What are you planting for October? What are you planting for November? What are you planting for December?
Yeah.
Late season.
What's that?
Beans.
Beans for late
For
season?
late season.
Dude, I love
Right?
corn. You can't
like
beat corn. Yeah.
I'm a standing beans guy. Late season standing beans. That's my thing. If you can, like I said before, fence them off. So one thing I learned on my lease last year was I said we had those bean plots. I would, if I'm planting those bean plots for late November into December into that late muzzy season that we have here in Iowa, I'm gonna keep those fenced until like November, because once I pull that fence, they're gonna get hammered.
Have you ever had where like a farmer comes through and freshly picks a cornfield, like a Barney Rebel Flintstone 1950 picker, and he picks like 30%, and then it's just like, my gosh.
Usually that's October,
dude.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I love corn. Mowed corn, just freshly picked corn is the best. But to get back to Jared, I'm gonna start it from October, right? Because some of your nut trees can really affect what food sources are their focal point in the fall. But with me, in October, I'm going to definitely be on cereal grains. Love hunting cereal grains. I can plant them late. I mean, up till September, you can still plant cereal grains. So I'm definitely going to hop on cereal grains. Then once the cold temperatures kick in and it starts to break down the bulbs and the tubes, your brassicas, I love hunting those. It's just, you can't get anything better than a big brassica stand. For me, late season hunting, when I'm taking my wife out, we're taking kids out. I mean, if you have that access, which again, not everybody does, you're asking me what my favorite is. If you can get a standing field, 1 acre, half acre, 5 acre, whatever it is, that has all ears of corn on it. Let's just say you have a half acre and you hot fenced it off so nothing can annihilate it. You open that fence out and you take a brush hog through there. Oh, yeah, it's the best day ever. It's like a dinner bell, right? I've gone through before where I'm like, dude, everybody can see us back here mowing this corn. Wide open timber. Go put the mower away. Get my stuff. We're walking back in. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's covered up. Cut corn. Man, I love it. It's the best.
Talk on the turnips, because I know like turnips and radishes kind of have like that early season attraction in the leaf and then late season.
Yeah.
Late.
Yeah. You ever seen them where they grab those leaves and they're chomping and they got that big leaf sticking out of their mouth?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really, they love that green. I mean, that's when everything's starting to brown up and die off. Your turnips and radishes, your cereal grains, they're still going to be green and leafy. For me, they love that broadleaf. They'll eat the leaves. And then once those leaves start turning, yellowing, you know, they just kind of get slimy and turn down. Then they start hammering the bulbs.
Yeah. Usually that's later season when they get the bulbs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's kind of an all-around food plot, I guess. Is like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the leaves of the turnips are kind of early season. And once they eat those, they're gone. And then you kind of maybe have a lull there, and then late season cold temperatures hit.
You'll see them digging for them.
Yeah.
You know, if you got snow and stuff, you'll still see them digging.
That's why a lot of guys plant turnips.
And I mean, they're pretty cheap comparison to growing, maintaining, managing corn and beans. Like, not everybody's got the tools to do that, or not everybody has a farmer that's going to do that. Your turnips and radishes, as far as I like to talk about tonnage, as far as producing tonnage through the season, you can't go wrong with turnips and radishes.
How many turnip radishes food plots do you have compared to everything else?
Oh, tons. Because you talked about killing plots, and it's like every time I've become kind of a food plot hunter, you know, like with tree stand hunting, rather than me going in, and you were talking earlier about strategic food plots, Jared, rather than me going into them, I let them come to me. And it's like every stand, and it's almost a sickness. Every stand, you always say, you're like, oh man, just rattling out of here, right? I'm kind of the point where I'm like, oh man, imagine if we put a little turnip and radish food plot right here, size of your living room. As long as it can grow, you know, they're gonna come to it.
You're right. I remember hunting angry. You're like, I think we should put a food plot. I'm like, why are you worried about that?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's just there's so many options.
Food plot? I'm like, yeah, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I love them. Love hunting turnips and radishes.
All right. So this is going to be kind of the last general question we cover, and then I'm going to have you break down 2 farms that I'm going to choose here from the coordinates.
Yeah.
Managing your property when you're doing all these different practices, be it planting food plots, excavating a site for a new food plot, you know, planting trees. How do you manage when and how often you go into a farm when working? I mean, obviously it's the off season, so there's a lot less stress about going in and blowing out a mature buck or whatever. But you know, no mature buck, be it summer, be it winter, be it fall, is going to handle consistent human pressure. So how do you manage that on your properties?
Well, why don't you do it as far as more of a everyday person? You have a lease, right? So you're not answering to anybody in your family about accessing your land. So how do you do that on your lease within, you know, reason? My
take personally is like, if I don't want to put any more pressure on deer than I have to. So this is kind of a wishy-washy answer, but like the least amount of pressure, the better. So I like to lean on calendar, weather, and get your food plots in when you can. And when it's most optimized for success. So like I'll look at a calendar or the forecast and say, okay, this week is going to be the best to get it in. And then you have that week to go get it in. I don't want to spend any more time out there than I need. That being said, on leases and a lot of even private ground, like there's a lot of human activity. Like I know some farms are different than, you know, here or some of these bigger farms where the pressure. And
you can't control whether the farmer's going into
their
property.
That's what I was just about to say.
You know what I mean?
A lot of these things you can't control. So like you can get away
it's frustrating.
You can get away with a little bit more, like farmers on 4-wheelers or just tractors screwing around.
And maybe deer get used to stuff like that, right?
Exactly. That's
they
what
get used to it.
Maybe they use it, maybe they don't, but I can control what I can control. So I don't want to spend any more time in the woods, especially if I'm hunting a specific deer than I have to. But with that being said, you have to be out there and you have to get your stuff done. So just looking at the forecast, looking at the calendar and making sure you're not out there wasting time is the number one thing I do. But that being said, I'm also dealing with least amount of acres. So like, I know you have a lot of farms where you're like, hey man, the weather's good. You're like pressing to get stuff done because you have so much.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, it's like shotgun versus rifle. Like I'm like looking and like, okay, these are the exact few days I need to get out there because I can't afford to spook any deer. But I know that you're a little bit different in that we have all of these, tasks to get done. So we just kind of have to get them done. So it really just depends.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And again, with me, different than Brad, is I got family now, right? So I have an investment that, I bought it for deer hunting, right? But I've got a wife that loves deer hunting and loves to be out in nature and helping me doing stuff, and it gives a way for us to get out and do something that we both like together. And then we have kids, right? I've got a 10-year-old boy, a 9-year-old boy, and a 3-year-old boy. You think that we used to be so weird about it. Like I remember my brother being, dude, we can't be going out there right now. You can't shoot a BB gun from the porch. I'm like, why do we have this farm then? So there's got to be a good mix, right? You want to utilize, in my case, my investment, and I want to be able to use my farm for more than just hunting. Hunting's just like a benefit to me of having a farm. Like I enjoy the habitat, the enhancement, the being out there and getting my hands dirty as much as I like hunting. And that can be a lot of things, right? Where we're blowing out deer. That can be, I'm jacked up to go shed hunting. Some people like mushroom hunting, take it or leave it. Some people like turkey hunting, take it or leave it. But these are all things that you want to do, right? Do you not do them? No, you absolutely do them. You got to have, if you have the luxury, have some sort of a sanctuary. You got to have that. You just have to. It could be you have 30 acres or 300 acres. Try to separate some area where your wildlife feel like they have a place that nobody goes into. There's no intrusion. They have that safe security cover. But for me, I got to kind of have a cutoff, right? Boys, stop riding your four-wheelers. Stop riding your dirt bikes. Stop, putzing around out in the woods with your BB guns. And that, once we're hitting that July, late July, early mid-August area, I try to start to reduce that pressure on my hunting farm. And I try to say, okay, guys, let's keep it a little bit closer to the road, closer to the pond.
And one thing specifically about food plots, like I know the original question was like food plot pressure. I'm guilty of this, but once I plant a food plot, I want to go back and check to see how it's doing.
I know.
And that's
terrible it's like it's a sickness.
Yeah, and that's tough for me. So I use cell cams a lot. Like I'll plant a food plot and then put a cell cam up kind of low. So that way if something walks by over the next few weeks, I can
check your plot.
Monitor how it's going without being there. So that's another thing. Like I know a lot of guys, and I used to be guilty of it before I moved to Iowa, but I would go plant a food plot. And then every week I'd be like, how's this food plot?
How's it looking?
Yeah, and that's not good. Like you don't want to go out there every day just to.
But you want to make sure your germination's right. You want to make sure your weed control's right. But you gotta find a healthy mix, and that's up to the individual. I can just say what I do and what the cutoff dates and the too much pressure and not enough pressure is for me. Obviously, no pressure is the best. But like you said, what if you planted a food plot and nothing germinated? You got no rain. You got no. Yeah. You're going to be like, you show up with your, you got it.
Yeah, you have to check it. So there's ways in using, cell cams we have, or like just minimal ways that you're not in there every day checking germination or weeds or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I think we'll all agree as deer hunters, the less amount of pressure, the better.
Right.
Love it. Well, you guys have provided a ton of valuable information here in this hour so far. So
talk for an hour.
I'm going to share my screen here. I've picked out 2 properties, and this is the first property. So Aaron, I'm going to hand you my computer.
Yeah.
It's in Illinois. It's the property with that waypoint on it. So zoom in a little bit, use the cursor of the mouse there to kind of detail what you see just from this map. On things. Yep. I believe we're going to click this. It looks like it is a 42 acre parcel. This is Melvin Stilson. So kind of talk about what you're seeing here, Aaron, and, you know, maybe some things. I mean, obviously you don't know how Melvin's hunting this or what he's got going on, but some things that you might do on that particular property.
So Melvin, one of the things I want to point out that I love about your farm, I love farms that have one big long piece of timber and then fingers coming off of it. It just gives you so many opportunities for hunting. But what I want to do is recommend with a property like this, if you guys notice, your access is going to be on the south side, right? So that's Melvin's one point of access.
That's what I was going to say. The first thing I noticed with this was your access. Basically one point of access. So accessing that north side
is going to be tough. So you're going to want to be careful as far as when you're hunting it, why you're hunting it. So I utilize trail cameras to kind of tell the picture on that north end for me to tell me, okay, now's the time to move. Now the time's to chill out. But you got enough cover in there where you're not relying on the timber, your neighbors to the east there. So if it's me, Melvin, I'm really going to be very, very careful with my intrusiveness. And I'm more of an observationist hunter. So you got that first field there, and not to block off all your opportunity to the north, this field here. What I would typically do is I would plant this into a cover. So you're not walking past here where this is food to then go hunt back in here. Every time you're coming through here, you're going to have deer, whether that's before dark, after dark, during dark.
Cover native grass.
I would put cover in there. Yeah. So you're going to want to work with your local NRCFs or what have you there, and try to get either a tree planting in there, try to get what's going to be very low maintenance, your warm native season grasses. And I continue to push your food back to the north there, and play your predominant winds based on what you hunt, right? So is your predominant wind where you're at in east, the north, the west?
That's so awesome with north wind.
I love it.
I love northeast wind. Your access is perfect on this farm.
But again, your east wind here is going to be killer too, because you're going to work off your neighbor's thick timber there to the east.
I'm sure this holds a lot of deer too. So if you can get food back into here, and basically what Aaron's saying is put cover in your front so you have that cover to get back here. Because right now, if this is food, you're not going to be able to get back here.
Wide open.
So cover in the front to basically get you to this back food.
And you notice how he's the only guy in here that has these hidden plots. Other than that, they're big ag fields. Yep. So if you have a way, Melvin, and I don't know what your access is looking like, but it looks like there has been some planting towards that north end. That's where I'd leave my food, and I'd be going in there every time I got a chance with the eastern wind. Yeah, I love the layout of this.
I mean, for 42 acres, that's about as cherry of a 42 as
dreamy.
Seriously.
I tell people to get dreamy.
When I pulled that one up from the coordinates, I was like, "Ooh, dang, that's a good 40."
Yeah, it's killer.
I like this little inside corner right here where this point is, where this pin is.
Mm-hmm.
That's money.
And it looks like he does have tree plantings, a tree break already to seclude his plots. Yeah, this is a killer setup. I always tell people, Melvin, that you'd rather have the right 40 than the wrong 400. And this is the right 40.
Good for you, Melvin. We're all jealous here. So I want to remind everyone, I know we just dropped the giveaway link in the chat once again. So if you want a 30-minute consult with Aaron, where you're going to go through in detail what you've already done to your farm, and, you know, provide him some insights as to how you're hunting it and this, that, and the other thing. And he's going to design a plan for you in a 30-minute breakdown. So go enter that giveaway at the link in the chat. And for the last breakdown here, we are going over to Minnesota. Woo! On Joseph. I'm going to murder your last name, so I'm not even going to try it.
You don't know that?
But it looks like about 135-acre parcel. Aaron, Brad, what are you seeing on this one? Maybe turn on hybrid and get an idea of some topography.
So, again, Joseph, I go right to the point where, wow, that's a lot of timber. I mean, around you, it's just crazy. So, back in Michigan, I would have a lot of buddies like, hey, dude, come out to my farm.
Flat.
Yeah, I'm like, come out to my farm and come tell me where to put some tree stands, right? So they bring me out to a 30-acre piece in the middle of 600 acres of timber. Like, where do I put my tree stand? I'm like, oh my gosh. So the coolest thing about you got your property here, Joseph, is you're rolling off of a huge amount of timber, and then finally you're back into what appears to be ag fields. So what I would do, again, here your access is killer. You got a river coming through there, so you have no lack of water too, but you've got a lot of bedding. What I like to do in a property like this, again, this is just me, I'm an observer. I'm an observant hunter. I locate my target before I move in. Oh yeah,
Swamps.
Yeah, love that. So on this property, I would let the holding capacity be its holding capacity. I would let your farm be the food, right? So I'm going to set up at more of an observation, and I'm going to have my kill spots set back up in my timber. And the reason I love this farm is you've got these pinch points. People, I always love river bottom grounds. This is a river bottom dream, right? And what that river is going to do for you, you notice these pinches in here. You can look on the onX map, look at the topography of where your pinch points are. They're right there. And you notice they're not going to go back in here. They're going to roll straight. You draw a line across here and look at your topography. I mean, here's your kill spot. Obviously back here's your observation areas to not get into the good stuff, but I like using your topography, your layout, and your river for pinch points, and you can see them in here. And then we talked about your kill plots. I don't know how your access is here to get across the river, but man, if you had access to get back to a spot like this when you have all the timber up in these hills, that would be killer. Worst case scenario, you go back into your farm. And we talked about areas that are doing nothing. And look at this area that the farmer or you is currently not farming. That could be a perfect little kill plot. And using native wild season grasses, warm season grasses, I like to put buffers around some of these areas along your timber in the river to create not only security cover, but entrance and exit cover for you to get in and out of there. But you got an abundance of opportunities as far as your food plot. So you think?
Yeah, this looks like a wild rut farm. Like I feel like you catch bucks cruising this river during the rut.
One of them where you get in the stand, you're like, dude, all I need is a set of horns.
Yeah,
and they're gonna come rolling off these hills.
Yeah. If this is me, I'm gonna dump back into this timber in November. I'm like you, I'm observation, so like I'm gonna hunt these edges until it's time to dump back into this timber and then get back here and just hit some horns. I mean, there's a lot of look at all this timber.
That's so different than what we're used to here. I'm used to it back hunting big woods in Michigan.
Even this down here,
been there.
You're gonna pull bucks that you've never seen before.
But again, here there's no food back. You know, move that cursor back in there. He's got the food going up there to the north.
That's true. If you zoom way out, a piece of public here it looks like, but zoom way out.
The public. How are you going to access that public? So I like using public farms timber like that to just let it be more of a part of your property. So how are the folks going to go back there and get to it? It's going to be pretty darn tough. You got great access. You got the access and you got the food.
So would you put a food plot back in this timber, Aaron, or would you just let this kind of bottom row crop do your work?
You know, when you say food plot back in that timber, would I do corn and beans? Absolutely not. You know,
but like a kill.
But would you do a green plot? I see. You know what? Here
to me, I just see all this timber, and it's like if you had something to draw them and condense them to a certain spot. If it'll grow, it looks like it might be.
Looks like there's mow spots in here, so it looks like Joseph's getting some sort of access, or a farmer is through a neighbor. If you could put that food plot back in here in the middle of it, not that food plot you're going to sit and hunt every day and pound it every day in and out, but that one where you're like, I'm going to wait for it to get magical, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or play the trail cameras on something like that, but wait for it to get magical and move in. I love the layout of this farm too.
Yep, pretty good. A couple pretty good farms that we got to look at there.
Guys. Thank you.
Well, guys, again, Aaron and Brad are putting in work on the 9010 project. If you search the 9010 project on YouTube, that is where the educational content is going to live. And this is not the last webinar that Aaron and Brad are going to help us do here. We're going to have at least one more this summer, which again, we'll be giving away some consultations, and we'll be rolling through a new set of topics to help you guys prepare for hopefully your best fall yet. So Again, if you guys have not clicked that link in the chat, do so in the next 30 seconds before I end this call. Get in on that consultation with Aaron. He's going to change the way that you hunt, and he's going to get you a wall of deer similar to the one behind him. That's a guarantee. If not, your money back. So we appreciate you guys coming out. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening here. Thanks for sharing an hour with us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.